Well, good afternoon. I'm just going to make sure this is working before I start. It doesn't always work. Okay, looks like it's working. Okay, so just a brief talk about what happened in New Zealand. Now, I used to be one of these very, very anti Muslim types. I listened to Pamela Geller and I used to read Jihad Watch. And, I was directed there when I first started showing signs of nationalism and care for my own people. A bunch of JIDF trolls under Pamela Geller and the guy Spencer from Jihad Watch, not Richard Spencer. I forget his name. Is it Robert Spencer? I don't know. It's a guy from Jihad Watch. And so they said, no, these are your enemies. These people are just coming to your country. They're just, you know, and you have to pay for them. And it's happening in Europe and the former colonies, etc., etc. You should be very angry at these Muslims, and you should also be very angry at them in their homelands too, because they're competitors with us, Israel, who's, you know, doing good things for democracy and anti-Muslim in Israel in the Middle East. And, apparently this guy in New Zealand bought into that. And I knew Anders Breivik too. I didn't know he was going to do anything crazy. He just told me he was reading a book, or I'm sorry, writing a book, and that he had enjoyed my arguments for the rights of white people, indigenous in Europe. So the Jews got what they want, and by that I mean the elite Jews, but since they're in charge of Judaism globally, the elite Jews can be referred to as the Jews. And I think it's important to notice that this guy gave the Jews exactly what they wanted, which is an example of a violent white man going out and indiscriminately killing non whites. Um, this is exactly what the Jewish elite wants. And if I'm going to come out and say it now. I was going to just leave it unmentioned, but there are what I presume to be Jewish ADL psyops, such as this. I presume any organization that promotes violence has Jews running it, or there are useful idiots that are being used as assets by Jews to run them. So I think this whole Bull Patrol thing, this Atomwaffe, I mean, anyone that's like advocating violence and celebrating atrocities that make whites look horrible, these people are idiots, and they're most likely controlled by Jews, whether they know it or not. So I'm going to come right out and say it. Don't be a Dylan Roof fan. Don't be a Breivik fan. Don't be a fan of anyone that went out and did mass atrocities. I mean, I haven't seen anyone go after and try to imprison the Rothschilds or these Jewish bankers that controlled the government of France, England, the United States, etc., etc. And all you're doing is these bankers bidding when you go out and indiscriminately hurt what are most likely innocent people. So I'm going to read to you now a book, and this is the situation the Jews have set up largely in the West. This is a book called The Nameless War by Sir Archibald Ramsay. I'm also going to be recording an offline recording of this and uploading it as a high quality audiobook. I have a Yeti Blue microphone that's doing the offline recording on a second device that I'll be turning on in a second here. So without further ado, I'm going to read to you now Ramsay's The Nameless War. And I'm going to put the image up as what I'm showing here. So making sure the audio is still working good. So we begin now with Sir Archibald Ramsay's The Nameless War. The introduction. Note to Classic Academia reprint. Readers of this book will find reference therein to an individual named Tyler Kent, a document called The Red Book, and the author's impression under imprisonment under Regulation 18B. Oh, I forgot to. I'm going to start over. I forgot my offline recording. I'll be re-uploading this. So this is Sir Archibald Ramsay's The Nameless War, and I will be uploading the high-quality copy that's being recorded on the offline device with the good quality microphone. But I'll stream it to you now because it's pertinent. And it's why we cannot come off as appearing to want violence or to indiscriminately support acts of atrocities against general populations of non-whites that will be used ultimately to try and disarm whites. And trust me, if you go up against your federal government wherever you are, unless the people no longer have faith in that government, unless everyone's already awake to the Jewish problem, if you go toe to toe with the government, you're going to get friggin' Waco. You're going to get ruby ridged. So, without further ado, I begin reading to you the note and then the introduction at the front of The Nameless War by Sir Archibald Ramsay. Note to the classic Academia reprint. Readers of this book will find reference therein to an individual named Tyler Kent, a document called the Red Book, and the author's imprisonment under Regulation 18B. You'll find out about this. This is the equivalent of the Patriot Act on steroids that was passed in Britain prior to World War II to lock up all of the people who spoke out against Jewish supremacist control of the British government and the use of Britain's military as a battering ram for Jewish banking interests. All three these topics deserve a fuller explanation. Tyler Kent was an American diplomat based in London in 1939 to 1940. Accused and imprisoned for taking copies of secret documents home and then allegedly passing them to, quote, to a, quote, white Russian and, quote, anti-communist, in parentheticals there, anti-communist, by the name of Anna Volkov. The latter allegedly passed some of these documents on to German contacts. Kent was also a friend of Archibald Ramsay, and the latter gave Kent a copy of his Right Club membership list, called the Red Book to keep safe. The Right Club, as Ramsay explains in this book, was his lobby within the Conservative Party, which aimed at reducing Jewish influence within the party. The Conservative Party, that is. This Red Book was Ramsay's only connection with Kent, and it served as a convenient but transparent reason to ensure his detention without trial under the notorious, which none of you have heard of, but it's called Regulation 18B in wartime Britain. And this was these laws against pointing out Jewish power, or ties between Jews and communism, or ties between Jews and trying to set up Germany for the Second World War. This is something that we're going to come across a lot in this book, and God bless, and I hope he's well wherever he is now, Sir Archibald Ramsay, for having written this book, so that you, the goyim of the former colonies of Britain, and that all free goyim around the world can hear the tale of Jewish tyranny long before the Patriot Act, which was written by Jews in Israel and introduced as a pre-baked cake that we all had to eat in America. So, without further delay, here's the introduction. It begins. Here is a story that people have said would never be written in our time, the true history of events leading up to the Second World War. Told by one who enjoyed the friendship and confidence of Mr. Neville Chamberlain during the critical months between Munich and September 1939. Munich, of course, was in 1938, and that was a peaceful resolution of the question of Germans being killed and maimed without reason in Czechoslovakia, while the Czech government, which was a puppet government of the Jews, arranged for the Red Army to occupy the forward air bases in Czechoslovakia in preparation for a forward assault on the Reich, which was a continuation of the attempt to invade Germany that happened in 1919 through 1922, where the Poles actually blocked the Jewish army of Bolsheviks, slaves, from entering into German territory. Also, that would have converted Poland already in 1922, 1921 into a Jewish murder state, a Bolshevik state. So, moving on. This is another attempt to explain just how bad Jewish power was in Britain prior to World War II. Okay, the next paragraph. There has long been an unofficial ban on books dealing with what Captain Ramsay calls the Nameless War, the conflict which has been waged from behind the political scene for centuries, which is still being waged, and of which very few are aware. The publishers of the Nameless War believe that this latest exposure will do more than any previous attempt to break the conspiracy of silence. The present work, with much additional evidence and a fuller historical background, is the outcome of the personal experiences of a public figure who, in the course of duty, has discovered at first hand the existence of a centuries-old conspiracy against Britain, Europe, and the whole of Christendom. So, by the way, this book was published in 1952, and that's the same year as my favorite book on Otto von Bismarck was published, which is Bismarck, the Man and the Statesman. But moving on. The Nameless War reveals an unscrupulous link between all the major revolutions in Europe, from King Charles I's time to the abortive attempt against Spain in 1936. One source of inspiration, design, and supply is shown to be common to all of them. These revolutions and the World War of 1939 are seen to be integral parts of one and the same master plan. And this is something you need to know. This isn't new. This didn't start with Bolshevism. It didn't start with Leveillerism in 1640s Britain. This is centuries old. Jewish supremacist Talmudic attempts to destroy Christendom and all free societies in Europe. And if you're a pagan and you're not Christian, this still applies to you. They're still trying to destroy all free societies where Jews aren't in control, or not in enough control in their opinion. This is talking about the Jewish plan, centuries old, perhaps millennia old, of Jewish world domination and the enslavement of all non-Jews. This is for all Goyim to hear, whether you're in China, India, Japan, Kenya, Italy, Germany, England, or any of the former colonies, or any other country in the world. This is for everyone. You need to know about this. After a brief review of the forces behind this declaration of war and the worldwide arrests of many who endeavored to oppose them, the author describes the anatomy of the revolutionary international machine, the machine which today continues the plan for supranational world power, the age-old messianic dream of international Jewry. And that, of course, is the enemy. It is the author's belief that the machine would break down without the support of its unwilling Jews and unsuspecting Gentiles, and he puts forward suggestions for detaching these elements. So, in other words, he's going to take an approach like Henry Ford, where he thinks that you can appeal to the general Jewish community and to the Shabbos Goyim. And as we'll learn with other books, that's very hard to do because of the system's propaganda set up for both Jews and non-Jews, as well as the reprisals that Jews as well as non-Jews receive when they blow the whistle on these types of international Jewish power structures. And, we can go into that. There were Jews as late as the 90s that were, and arguably the 2000s, that have been getting threatened by Jewish terrorists like the JDL, which is a branch of the ADL, the Jewish Defense League, which is a terrorist arm of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. And we all know also about all the other people that have been imprisoned for trying to stop Jewish wars of aggression and destabilization designed to support Jewish revolutions. And we'll get into that with other books, other topics. If you're a little supporter, I need you to also become a reader or an audiobook listener, and that's why I'm doing this here for you. This is the Learning College. Moving on. It is the author's belief that the machine would break down without the support of its unwilling Jews and unsuspecting Gentiles, and he puts forward suggestions for detaching these elements. Christians say, quote, Captain Ramsey, a Christian gentleman of unflagging courage, believed that the war with Germany was not conceived in the interest of Britain and could only lead to... we're going to have to do this another time. It looks like my boat's being worked on now. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know if you hear that. That's the sound of a machine removing a damaged outer layer from my hull so that repairs can be administered. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go now.